Everybody, this is Ken Waller from Behind the Inspiration Podcast. We decided to take our trip on the road. So this podcast is coming to you pretty much live from Cambridge, Maryland. We're currently at the Harriet Tubman Museum and Educational Center.
With the museum since the last time I've been here. I mean, there's been tremendous strides made. The room that we're currently in is a new room. There's also a mural now on the.
Absolutely. I don't know where to start.
That's
Thank
okay.
you so
many
much.
things.
First of all, I'm delighted that we're doing this.
Thank you.
And appreciate
My
you
pleasure.
coming down.
My pleasure.
So much has happened. I came here in 2021, actually. But before I came here, it was the events of 2020 that brought me here. We know what happened. We were sheltered in place, but more importantly, and even worse than that, in my opinion, is that the country was killing black men and women. Breonna Taylor, George Floyd,
Yes.
Ahmaud Arbery. And that frightened me. I have I've lived a very solid middle-class life in my little bubble doing my stuff, not really worried about the rest of the world. But that was a very sobering time for me. I felt like my freedom had been taken away. So one night watching the coverage of George Floyd, there was a book on my bookcase that I've had for a long, long time. My father gave it to me when I was 10 years old. And it's called Runaway Slave. And when I was watching the coverage of Floyd, I felt like he was my brother, my uncle, my cousin. I felt a real connection to him. And that book started glowing. And I went over and I picked it up and I began reading it. And it was The Runaway Slave. It was about Harriet Tubman. Now, I had never been to Cambridge before. I drive through here. You go to St. Michael's.
Right.
You go on to Ocean City. It changed me.
Wow.
So after that was in May of 2020. I spent the rest of the summer training so that I could walk the Underground Railroad.
And that's a good point you make right there. If you don't mind, I just want to stop you
Sure.
and really expound on that experience in itself, because hands into you being aware of Cambridge, Maryland, being aware that this is where Harriet Tubman was, to really start to engage yourself with that walk. So how did that all come about?
Well, I realized, and it was mostly during my training, because when I first decided I was going to do it, I didn't think I was really going to do it. I thought it was going to be too tall. And walking through the parks in Maryland, it hit me that I was walking on the blood-soaked grounds of the ancestors. Every step I took, everywhere in the state of Maryland, Maryland was a huge breeding ground for slavery. And it's as if their spirits or their souls just took me over. And I felt a responsibility to acknowledge them by walking, taking one step in front of the other. And I said, I have to do it. And that, to me, defines freedom. Taking a goal, walking towards it. You have to walk. You have to put one foot towards your goal. And that's what set me on this whole new trajectory in my life.
And that's wonderful too, because again, the goal setting that we put in place in front of us was an excellent step that you took towards that. But I have one more thing I just wanted to touch on as well, because you also you're a musician, you're a singer, you're a jazz singer. So how did that all evolve with that being a part of this journey of the Harriet Tubman experience and the Harriet Tubman journey? How did that all come about?
I have to wonder that myself. So I retired in 2019.
Okay.
In DC, I had a real estate company. We developed housing cooperatives.
Okay.
And I decided to turn it over to my son in 2019.
Okay.
And I needed, when you retire, for those who are thinking about it, you have to have something to do. You can't just sit back,
Right, and do nothing. Right.
So my dad was actually a musician,
Oh.
a very fine and blues in the military. He was a career military person. And he died in 2012. And one of the things I promised him was that one day I'm going to be a musician. I promise I'll do that. It took me another 6 years. I went to New York in 2016, and I went to New York Jazz Academy and studied this jazz genre. Then I went down to New Orleans. I wanted to get a piece of that genre. So I went to these different workshops and camps and really enjoyed it. And it came naturally. I didn't realize that. And then in I got gigs. I was going to go to Uganda and teach in a music school. And I had met a woman in New York who was
the evolution of your singing career and how it evolved now to the museum. I watch you on social media, and I watch your clips, and I watch a lot of things that you're really doing in this community now.
Yeah.
I mean, you're doing a lot of music gigs in this community. So
Yeah.
how did that all come about?
Well, music.
Music,
What
the
is-
equalizer.
What?
Yes.
But it's the equalizer.
Yes.
So one thing that we can all agree on. But the more I'm reading and studying this thing, and historians will debate me, but debate is good. Gets people
absolutely.
thinking. The very thing that we hear, the first sound when we're and these are the sounds that were part of our culture in Africa. The sounds of our heartbeat, the sounds of nature, the birds, the movement of the water, the drum that came from Africa. So it only made sense for me once I understood Harriet Tubman. Her grandmother came from Ghana sometime in 1750. And to endure that harsh journey of the Middle Passage from Africa through the Caribbean to come to the United States, these folks were captured, put on these ships, shackled, stacked on ships like books on a bookcase. The one thing that they could coalesce around was the sound.
Wow.
Consoling them, giving them hope in Ghana sometime in 1750. And to endure that harsh journey of the Middle Passage from Africa through the Caribbean to come to the United States, these folks were captured, put on these ships, shackled, stacked on ships like books on a bookcase. The one thing that they could coalesce around was the sound.
Wow.
Consoling them, giving them hope. Story. Okay, to come in and give talks about their books. We have magnificent storytellers that come in. I've had doll making workshops. I've had lantern making workshops in honor of one of the ways that they communicated along the Underground Railroad. If a house had a lantern, it meant it was a safe place to stop as you traverse this Underground Railroad.
I can remember the T-shirt.
Yes.
You had a T-shirt making
Yeah, we had
event
just
as well.
recently.
Right.
We had
I remember that.
An amazing artist who's going to come back and the mural on the back of the building, Sydney Smith Jordan.
Okay.
She's an illustrator, graphic artist, pretty famous. She tells me she just won a Grammy.
Wow.
And we're going to go up to New York and support her. She accepts the award. Did a T-shirt. I said, I want to do just from here. They come from all over the place.
Yeah, I remember you had a group from New Jersey. I remember seeing that because I follow you, so of course I know a lot about that.
I'm astounded. The groups that come, and I'm just yeah.
How was that walking tour? Well, how does that correlate, or more or less, I should ask, what areas are you taking folk around to be able to see some of the rich history?
Sure.
Of this
So
area?
I have two tours, and I had to narrow it down.
Okay.
I mean, I've walked the Underground Railroad from the Brodus Plantation here to Philadelphia.
Okay.
I've done that a couple times.
Okay.
I've walked from Auburn, New York to Canada. So if you go with me, I'll walk you all day long. I will. I love it because it's the most freeing exercise one can do, especially outside. But we do two walk pier where that's right at the Choptank River where the slave ships came in.
Wow.
So I take you through downtown Cambridge. We talk about Gloria Richardson. We talk about the Civil War. We talk about the indigenous people that were here first.
Wow.
And we go past the courthouse where the enslaved people were ushered down the road from the slave ships and sold. And then we end up at Long Wharf. I walk you out on the pier and I tell you to look out and imagine, close your eyes, open your heart, and imagine being on that slave ship. So that's one. The other one is the countryside walk, where I will take you to Bucktown Store. And this room is the Bucktown Store room. I call it Minty's first act of courage because this is where, at age 13, she gets hit in the head.
I remember that story very well.
And it changes the trajectory of her life. So I'll take you, I started Bucktown Store. I walk you down the country roads.
So I see the strides and I see the things that's going on in the community. So how did all that?
Well, it just kind of happened. I think, well, I'm considered a come here, which isn't always a good thing in small towns.
You're outside the circle.
I'm outside the
circle. Okay.
Who are you to come here and talk about our area? Yeah. But I think, and once I started doing the walks, especially the walks, people started making comments. I post a lot on social media every day. And they started making comments about how the walks made them feel, how they liked the approach to this history. It's an approach that they can relate to. And the community started welcoming me. And it's beautiful. I love coming here. You know, for 33 years I had a career in real estate, but I must say that what I do now is the best thing I've ever done in my
It's
entire
rewarding.
life. It's
rewarding.
so incredibly rewarding. And it's effortless for me.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do it. It brings me enormous joy. So when I sit here and talk to you about Harriet Tubman, the period, our ancestors, it's genuine.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people connect to what's genuine, what's sincere.
And you know, I always say that it's something about the gifts that we're all given has a tendency to really put us in line with the things that are important. And it's so ironic because, you know, I always go back, and I think I may have asked you this question earlier. You know, you said your dad actually inspired you from the music perspective. But as far as even having a mindset to be where you are today, who inspired you?
I would still say my dad, my mother. I grew up in a very nurturing environment. My father was strict as a dickens, let me just tell you that. I didn't like that so much.
Right.
But and my grandmother, I was telling a group yesterday about my grandmother. You know, your parents and your grandparents, if you're lucky enough to know them, they set the groundwork. You don't realize it when you're doing it. But as I think back, my grandmother was preparing me to do these walks. My father, when he was went to fight in the Korean War, he left us on the farm in North Carolina. She was preparing me to walk and know how to exist in nature and tolerate the weather. I didn't know that. My mother, I mean, she was a very fancy, prim, proper woman. So she, you know, she said, you must always look good and sit up straight. And when you speak, articulate in those words with the proper word endings. I used to hate her telling me that. Why was that important? But she was preparing me for what I do today. My father was with his music, and he loved all genres of music, and we had to listen to them. We had the turntable with the needle on it, yeah. Had to put the nickel on.
Right, I remember those days. Well, I don't want to tell my age, but yeah, I remember those days.
And so, you know, we listened to music, and I didn't really want to at the time, but he was preparing me for what I'm doing right now. So in your quiet moments, as you grow up and figure stuff out, and you have to grow up and figure it out, you realize what your purpose is.
Wow.
And I've been able, and I'm blessed, so grateful, to put the things that my grandmother, my grandparents, my mother and father taught me with my love of what I'm doing now. So it comes naturally. I don't have to think about it. I can read voraciously books about this stuff. I didn't do that when I was in school. Reading was sort of laborious for me, but now, oh my God, I'm always reading. I want to make certain I'm giving the right information. And it's just effortless because I've tapped into what's inside me from what was nurtured from a little girl to do what I'm doing now.
You definitely, I'm sure, I mean, based on the conversations, based on me following you, you have most certainly been an inspiration to this community from what I see. And, you know, I'm looking at, you know, the evidence of who you are, who you become, whether or not you're from the outside or you're from here in this county. You know, and I just want to ask you, so what's in the future? What does the future look like for the Harriet Tubman Museum and Educational Center?
Well, I plan to be here as long as I can. I'm newly married. I will be married a year next month. And I'm happy that my husband, David Cole, is embracing this because he could have said, "Look, no, we got to."
And just to jump in,
do something else.
Your husband is also a musician.
Oh, he is the ultimate musician.
There you go. Okay, let's clarify that.
Not only is he a musician, but he's a music educator. You can hum a few bars and he can write a chart. I mean, he's amazing. He's got an amazing talent. But he's embraced this, and together, we're going to continue to be here until we get the signal not to do it again. I think you have to wait for a signal.
Exactly.
It comes. Exactly. But right now, the signal, and Harriet and the ancestors are telling me to keep moving, keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Awesome. So look, what do you have coming up regarding your tours?
Yeah.
The Jazz on the Mural, which is outside. Your bus.
Yeah.
Groups coming in. So
we've got on our website. Our website is harriettubmanmuseumcenter.org. You can go on and book a walk. If you want to do a tour, you simply send a message out through our website, and I'll get it, and I'll tell you what's possible. And right now, we have most weekends from now until the end of the summer. We have tours. We have school tours. We have women's groups coming. We have sororities coming, church groups coming, and we're very excited. We have the Naval Academy. They were here a couple of weeks ago just on a tour, and I said, you guys got to come back and walk with me. So I'd be doggone if one of their officers sent me an email, and they're coming back to walk with me.
That is
so that's
so
pretty
awesome.
amazing.
Yeah.
Think of the message, and of course, I'm going to post it all over the place.
Right. Exactly.
That's going to send to everybody else. Yes. I mean, the groups that come to walk with us. So that's ongoing. Our Jazz at the Mural starts again in May. That's right, in May, the second Saturday of every month. The only reason I'm not doing April is because my husband and I are going to Japan, and we're going to be singing these code songs in Japan. We'll be there for most of the month. So April 2nd starts our first series, and we'll go through December. Yeah, and then people can come at any time, book online if they want to lecture. This is our story room. It's so beautiful.
It's awesome. It's an awesome room.
This room is just, and so we'll sit here. We'll sit you in the chairs, and you see I can talk endlessly, right?
That's okay. It's awesome information.
Tell you the story. And now what I'm doing to make everyone feel included, because sometimes, slavery is not a difficult.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very, very difficult topic to discuss.
Yeah.
And so
it's like a sore topic for some people.
It is, but we have to know about it.
Yeah,
we have to understand
realistically.
it. Yeah.
Yes.
And so I found a way to tell the story in a way that people can understand it. I do it through music. And I incorporate the story. Not only do I talk about Harriet Tubman being enslaved here, but I talk about the period, the Civil War, what was going on here, the people living here. And so they can understand and connect.
Great.
And I always end with saying that we all have ancestors. We have a responsibility to know what they did because it shapes who we are now.
So, Ms. Linda Cole, I am just super excited, and I'm very appreciative that you took the time to allow us to come and take the Behind the Inspiration podcast on the road.
Yeah.
I want to thank Inspired Media for being able to produce this show. All the lighting and all the cameras all over the place. You guys did a great job with that. Yes. I also, too, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Mr. William Jarman.
Yes, and he's here.
Who's a part of this?
Mr. Jarman, we need you to stick your head in.
So Mr. Jarman will be making his way.
He's going to make his entrance. Without Bill Jarman, we could not be.
Yes.
He's just incredible.
So walking to the shot right now was Mr. William Jarman. Yes. Mr. Jarman, we thank you so much. I met Mr. Jarman when I met Miss Harris Cole back in 2021. It's been a long time. And we just randomly came past here, and the wealth of information and knowledge that he had kind of like blew me away. And I told him that I would be back. And it took a couple of years, but I'm here. And I'm here with a purpose this time, to make sure that we can tell Harriet Tubman's story and to allow people who may not be able to get to this area, maybe wherever you are in the world, will be able to see this video, and you may get curious to know more about Harriet Tubman. Because I do believe that without our history, there's possibility of perishing. There's not a lot of folk out here that will tell our rich history to our children. And you may hear me talk about that a lot because our children don't really get it, the history that we have from school, unfortunately. So I want to thank you guys for being pioneers to make sure that that message gets out, make sure that the kids understand it, different races, different nationalities, they can understand the true power of history, and especially Harriet Tubman's history. So again, Ms. Linda Harris Cole, I want to thank you. Mr. Jarman, I want to thank you as well for inviting us to the Harriet Tubman Museum and Educational Center. So thank you very much.
Thank you. A pleasure.
Peace, y'all.